I never imagined I'd be here, on the porch of the house I grew up in, with just a bag and $60 in my pocket. Yet, that's the situation when you finally grasp the fact your family has been slowly robbing you of your future, bit by bit, over the years. My name is Emma Sullivan, and I'm 22. I just found out my mom drained my college fund to cover my sister Jessica's third shot at starting college. "You're overreacting," Mom said, without even glancing up from her phone when I showed her the bank records. 3 withdrawals under Margaret Sullivan's name, that's my mom, amounting to $24,650. My entire future vanished. Jessica was sprawled out on the sofa, a smug grin on her face. "It's not like you'd have even used it. You work at a bookstore." I'd worked on saving that money for 4 years. 4 years of extra shifts, missing out on fun events and eating cheap meals. 4 years of believing I would break free of the family pattern and be the first Sullivan to get a college degree. "That money was mine," I said, though my voice was surprisingly calm despite the fury brewing inside me. "I worked hard for every single penny." My mom finally looked up, and her face turned into that familiar expression I'd seen so many times, the one that said I was the issue, always the problem. "Family supports family, Emma. Jessica needed it more. Plus, you've always been self-sufficient." I felt a shift happen internally at that instant, or maybe everything finally made sense. It wasn't something new. This feeling encapsulated my whole life, distilled into a moment of absolute understanding. When I was 8 years old, I was the one blamed when Jessica took lunch money from Mom's purse. At 16, after working and saving for months to get a used car, my savings were borrowed to buy Jessica a new laptop. For every Christmas, Jessica received designer handbags while I got hand-me-down clothes. I was their go-to for money, the one they took their frustrations out on, and the person who was always blamed. "You're right," I replied, shocking both of them. "I can manage on my own." I went to my room, gathered the things I couldn't live without into my duffel bag, and took only one personal keepsake, a childhood photo of me smiling, before I understood the true meaning of family in the Sullivan family. As I walked out, Jessica yelled after me, "You'll be back. You have nowhere to go." I didn't turn around. She was mistaken. I had everywhere to go. That initial night was the toughest. I spent it in a train station open around the clock, holding my bag close, trying to sleep in short bursts. By the time morning came, I was hungry, and the bleakness of my predicament really sank in. I tried 3 coffee shops, 2 stores, and a grocery store before I met Manuel Lopez, who needed a dishwasher at his little diner, Lopez's Home Cooking. "You start today," he said, glancing at my duffel bag but asking me nothing. $6 an hour plus free meals, cash at the end of your shift." I gave a slight nod, feeling incredibly thankful. By the time that day concluded, my hands were sore, my lower back was throbbing, and I had earned $42 more than when I'd begun. A week later, I got a second job at Bean and Brew, tackling the early morning shifts before I went to the diner. After 3 weeks, I'd saved up enough to cover the security deposit on a small studio apartment, complete with a mattress on the floor and a shower that never really provided hot water. It belonged to me. No one had the power to take it away. I managed to get by like this for 2 months, working, resting, then back to working, until I was curious enough to peek at my old bank accounts. That's when the ultimate betrayal surfaced. My checking account, which once contained my emergency fund of $212.47, was now completely empty. The transaction entries simply stated, "Transfer authorized by account holder." I didn't authorize a thing. I sat there on my worn-out mattress, surrounded by the few things I owned, and something changed within me. If Margaret Sullivan thought she could destroy my future, I'd craft a new one, and ensure she regretted ever underestimating my capabilities. That evening, as I counted the tips, $1 bills that smelled faintly of coffee and frying oil, I reached into my duffel bag and found something I'd forgotten about. A little lavender candle I had crafted a long time ago. Making candles had once been my passion in high school, a hobby that neither Jessica nor my mother had ever valued. I put it up to my face, breathing in that smell I knew so well, and I recalled how talented I had been at it. Before my mom stopped me, saying it messed with family time. Customers at the farmer's market near me had raved about what I made, which really meant it kept me from being able to babysit Jessica. The following day, I pulled every dollar from my new bank account, which was $212.47, and it was so ironic it was the same amount my mom had swiped. I then placed an order for some fundamental candle-making materials. 3 weeks after that, Lunar Lux Candles made its debut on Etsy. In my small kitchen, I had carefully made each one, working late into the night after my work shifts were over. To start, I had just 5 scents: Lavender Dreams, Midnight Jasmine, Ocean Memories, Fireside, and New Beginnings. My first purchase came 3 days later, then I got another, then I got 5 more. I was wiped out but so incredibly excited. It wasn't about getting by anymore, it was about demonstrating something to myself. Then came the 1-star reviews. The smell was awful, it gave me a headache. The candle got here broken, the seller wouldn't give a refund. Don't bother, these are amateurish. I had not refused any refunds at all. I hadn't gotten a single complaint. I examined the usernames: Lavender Lover 58, Candle Fan 2000, Scent Queen. They were all brand new accounts. Then I found the Reddit post. My sister's awful little candle business. Should we write more reviews? Face with tears of joy, Jessica Sullivan 22 made the post, and it had a link to my Etsy shop. I documented the screenshots, flagged the accounts as suspicious, and watched Etsy delete those fake reviews. Nevertheless, the harm had already been done. My sales dwindled significantly. I was at Bean and Brew, mindlessly making lattes when my coworker Riley commented on my eyes, noticing their redness. "Rough night?" she asked, gently nudging my arm. Suddenly, I was explaining everything to her: the theft, my family, my shop that had been sabotaged. Riley listened attentively, her face becoming serious. "Your family is completely awful," she ultimately stated, "and I have a plan." Riley had a large following on TikTok, with 50,000 people watching her videos. That evening, she came to my apartment and recorded me making candles, sharing my story while I worked. The video was titled, "From Homeless to Entrepreneur: How One Girl Built a Business After Her Family Stole Her College Fund." It quickly went viral, catching the attention of many viewers. Orders came in so rapidly I couldn't keep up. Riley assisted me in setting up official social media profiles. We created additional videos showcasing the process, the aromas, and my cramped apartment turned into a workspace. 3 months after that, I gave up my job at Bean and Brew. 2 months later, I departed from the diner, saying goodbye to Manuel with a hug and promising to visit as a customer in the future. 6 months after I left my mother's home, I signed a lease for a small warehouse space that included an office. I employed 2 part-time workers. Lunar Lux Candles was highlighted in a Brands to Watch section in a local business publication. I switched my phone number, set up fresh email addresses, and relocated to a different part of the city. I erected barriers around my fresh start, not because I was scared, but because I was being strategic. I wasn't ready for anyone to locate me. About a year into my business, I received an email from Lux Aroma. They expressed interest in partnering with me to develop an exclusive product line for their luxury retail locations. This contract would provide me with financial stability, along with nationwide recognition. The very day I signed the agreement, seated within their elegant downtown headquarters conference room, I let myself search for my family online, which was the first time since I left. The initial search result was a local news piece: local family facing foreclosure after years of poor financial decisions. There was my mother's house, the place I had escaped from, with a foreclosure notice glaringly displayed in the photo. The report also stated that Jessica Sullivan had withdrawn from the exclusive university she was attending because she'd failed most of her courses. Initially, I felt numb. Then a gradual, pleasant sense of satisfaction grew inside me. I hadn't done anything to hurt them. It wasn't necessary. Their own decisions were what brought them down. That evening, my mother called. I kept my old phone off and locked away in my desk drawer for a day like this. "Emma," she said, her voice cracking, which I recognized now as a form of manipulation. "We need you. Family should be there for each other." "Like you were there for me," I responded, keeping my voice steady. "That was different. We messed up, but we're family." I stated, "You can't excuse stealing based on our relationship. You took my college savings. You drained my bank account. We were in a bad spot." So was I, recall, when I departed with just a small bag. There was quiet for a moment, then Jessica misses you. As if timed perfectly, my email notified me of a message from Jessica. I was just envious. You always did so much better than me. Please assist us. I nearly chuckled. They hadn't grown at all. Farewell, mother, I said and ended the call. The following day, Mrs. Chen, from next door to my childhood home, put up a Facebook post about the way the Sullivans had treated me. She had clearly observed more over the years than I knew. The post got a lot of attention in the area. Jessica's academic misconduct, the actual reason for her leaving one university, was revealed by a former classmate in the comments. My former high school friends shared anecdotes of how my mother had manipulated me, how Jessica had pilfered my belongings, and how I was never allowed to be recognized for my accomplishments. I watched as the community I grew up in finally understood the reality. I didn't foresee this part of my payback, but I was glad for it. My company continued to flourish. I expanded, employed more staff, and introduced new product lines. I relocated into a stunning apartment with high ceilings and a city view. I started attending evening classes at the local college, small steps toward the education I'd been robbed of. I constructed the life they claimed I couldn't achieve. A year and a half after I left, they showed up at my warehouse. My assistant tapped on the door while I was in a meeting with my 15 employees. She softly announced, "Two ladies are here to see you. They say they're family." I responded with a calm nod. "Let me finish this up in 5 minutes and then send them to my office." I concluded the meeting, smoothed down my silk blouse, and proceeded to my office, which featured glass walls and marble floors. I'd chosen it specifically to project an image of prosperity. My mother and Jessica appeared to be worn down and less vibrant. Jessica's expensive clothing had been exchanged for generic jeans and a faded t-shirt. My mother's hair, formerly colored and styled with care, revealed gray roots and split ends. "Emma," my mother exclaimed, observing the signs of my accomplishments, "you've achieved a lot." "You're in a position to help your family, aren't you?" Jessica chimed in, her gaze assessing despite her demure stance. I motioned for them to sit. They immediately sat down, leaning forward with eagerness. "What do you want precisely?" I inquired. "Just a loan," my mother said swiftly. "To get back on track. The bank took the house and Jessica's student loans are in default." "I'll do whatever it takes," Jessica pleaded in a desperate tone. "Please, I'll work for you. I'll start at the very beginning." I examined them closely, these women who had influenced my upbringing with their unkindness and self-centeredness. They weren't here because they'd transformed or out of affection for me. They were there because I possessed something they desired. "No," I said simply. My jaw dropped. My mother's gaze turned cold. "After all we did for you," she started. "You did absolutely nothing for me," I fired back. "You swiped from me. You demeaned me. You tried to ruin my company with bogus reviews, and now you're here not because you regret your actions, but because you're broke." "We're blood relatives," my mother declared. "Family members don't steal the money set aside for college," I responded, rising to my feet. "Family doesn't clean out bank accounts without asking. Family doesn't create Reddit threads making fun of someone's efforts." Jessica recoiled. She hadn't known I was aware of that. "I'm not here to be lectured," my mother said sharply, her composure cracking. "You're either going to help us or you're not." I opened my desk drawer and retrieved 2 bus tickets headed to Riverside, where my aunt resided, the only one in my family who had ever treated me well. "This is the only support you'll receive from me," I said, setting the tickets on the desk. "Aunt Rachel told me she'd give you a place to stay for 2 months so you can find work. After that, you're on your own." "Bus tickets," Jessica scoffed. "You have all of this and you're giving us bus tickets." "I had nothing when I left," I reminded her. "You possess more than I ever did." My mother stood, trembling with fury. "You unappreciative little." "This meeting is finished," I said, pushing the intercom button. "Susan, please show Mrs. Sullivan and Jessica out." My mother's words were a sharp whisper as my security guard showed up. She said, "You will regret this later. You'll recall who your family is when you're alone and have absolutely nothing." A genuine smile spread across my face. I was amused. "I already don't have anything from you, and I don't have anyone like you in my life. It's truly the greatest choice I've ever made." I saw them being escorted out through the glass walls. Jessica glanced back once, and her face showed a mixture of hate and something that might have been admiration. I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd imagined. What I felt instead was something superior, nothing. They couldn't cause me any pain anymore. I was standing in front of my childhood neighborhood, 3 years after I left with only a bag. The Sullivan house had been bought by new homeowners, a young couple with a small child playing in the yard where I'd hidden my dreams in secret. Lunar Lux Candles was now part of a big lifestyle brand. I kept my position as creative director with a great salary and stock options. I'd finished my associates and was still working on my bachelor's. I'd also started a mentorship program at the local community center, assisting young women who were trying to leave similar scenarios. One of them, Maya, was so much like me, resolute, imaginative, and eager to escape a mother who viewed her as just a tool. "How did you manage to do it?" she asked me one day while we worked on her resume. "How did you not let the rage consume you?" I found myself considering my mother and Jessica, who were in Riverside working jobs that barely paid after having taken the bus tickets. Aunt Rachel made sure I was kept in the loop, not because I requested it, but because she felt it was important. I came to the conclusion that sometimes getting even doesn't mean you have to do anything, I shared with Maya. It's about succeeding. It's about constructing the kind of life they told you was impossible. Maya gave a slow nod. "So you don't harbor hatred towards them anymore?" "Hate takes up valuable energy that I'd rather spend on other things," I replied. The best form of revenge wasn't about revealing their secrets or causing them embarrassment. It was about becoming someone they couldn't possibly affect. That evening, I lit a Lavender Dreams candle, the very first fragrance I had ever made, and gazed out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my mother and sister were facing the repercussions of their decisions, just like I was facing mine. The key difference was, I could look at myself in the mirror every morning and appreciate the person staring back. I did more than just make it through. I triumphed